record. And here we go. I will start first. My name is Sam. I am with the Pollard Memorial Library, and I am very excited to welcome the wonderful E.M. Anderson. Woohoo! And we are here today to talk about the remarkable retirement of Edna Fisher. And you can't see because it's blurred. Oh no. But you can see it on E's wonderful background, which is the most awesome thing I've ever seen. And today I learned that you can make backgrounds for Zoom, and that's honestly might be the highlight of my day so far. So I am going to introduce E, and then we're going to jump into some questions. E.M. Anderson, she, they, is a queer neurodivergent writer and author of The Remarkable Retirement of Edna Fisher. Her work has appeared in Wineblood Press's anthology From the Depths, S.J. Whitley's Awakenings, Acute Mutants anthology, and Dark Horses, the magazine of weird fiction, with more forthcoming from Gutslut Press. They have 2 master's degrees and a feral passion for trees, birds, and Uncle Iroh from Avatar, which I love. Despite all their book smarts, it is E's doomed to one day vanish into the depths of a mysterious forest, never to be seen again, after ignoring the warnings of the locals just because she wanted to befriend the trees, or maybe find a cool rock. Until that faithful day, you can find them on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, or Instagram at eLizManderson. And I think that's adorable. But please don't fall into the depths of the forest. I would miss you.
It's a constant goal to just become one with the trees. It just hasn't happened yet. So, for now, we're safe.
Okay, because I need more books. Edna would be very lonely with just Edna and the short stories. So you can't disappear into the forest. Unless you find a way to, have Wi-Fi in the forest, then you can become one with the trees.
That would be kind of the ideal, would be to become one with the trees, but still have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. So, gonna jump into it. Real hard question. How are you feeling since the book's release on Friday? I know you've kind of had a busy week so far.
Yeah, I have. So exhausted. That's a big part of it. But other than that, good. I took the Thursday through Wednesday off from work, so when I have not been doing book things, I have been able to just sleep mostly. So yeah, it's very busy and exhausting and people-y, but it's things I want to be busy with, so it's good, except for the being tired.
Yeah, I can't imagine peopling. I'd work in a public facing job, but it's a lot being on for multiple days in a row.
Yeah, so, even just yesterday's virtual book launch, it was really fun, but then after that I was I don't think I even want to turn the TV on. I just kind of want it to just be quiet and not deal with any more people. As even as fun as it was, I was all right, time to just turn off now.
Time to find a dark room and put head under a pillow. I feel that on a spiritual level. So you had both an in-person and virtual launches. How'd those go?
Really well. So the in-person launch was pretty small, but the space was very small. It was at a local indie bookstore that I like a lot. And so there were enough people that she had to put out 2 more chairs, and then we still had some people standing, so that was cool.
That's always great.
Yeah, that one was I left the planning for last minute because that one was just me. I wasn't in discussion with anyone. It was just me. And I was what do I do if it's just me? So I talked about the book and my writing in general for 50 minutes. And then, and we played bingo as we did at the virtual launch. And then, yeah, sat around just chatting and signing books. And it was like a party, but in a good way. So it turns out that if I know everyone who's there and I can talk about writing, I don't mind a party as much. So that went really well. And then the virtual launch, I don't know how many people actually showed up, but we had 55 signed up, and I think at least 30 people did show up. We played bingo there, so like just relevant to the book bingo, which Edna would hate. And had a good time. I was in conversation with S.J. Whitby, who wrote the Cute Mutants series. So yeah, so that was really fun. I just had to like go sit after and not talk to anyone for a bit, but they both did go very well.
I'm so glad. I know, like, it's a lot, but you did it. Like I keep telling you, it's a lot, and you're doing it, and you're doing great. So, for anyone listening, either here now or who's gonna watch later, who hasn't read about Edna, can you tell us a little bit about what your book is?
Yeah, so it is about an 83-year-old who becomes the chosen one, and she goes on a fantastical adventure. And she thinks that her destiny is very straightforward, like, you're the chosen one, go stop this evil dragon riding sorcerer from wiping out this dragon fighting force that her son used to be on. But then as she travels farther and learns more about the sorcerer and the knights and dragons and all of these other things, she realizes that it is not that black and white, and things get more complicated than that.
I like it. I like that we have a protagonist who's like not a regular, not like a teen, not even someone in like their early 20s, but we get like an elderly person. And I don't know, for that I'm really excited to like give it to my grandma and be like, here you go, happy birthday, have a book you like reading.
That is
Because my
like my
grandma's,
favorite
I think,
thing.
is the same age as
That
Edna,
is
so it's
that is
cute.
my favorite thing, when people are like, I'm gonna get this for my grandma, and I'm like, please get it for your grandma. Like, I would be so happy. I just want like an army of like old fans. Like, that's the dream, is just a bunch of old people who are like, I loved your book. Like, that is my weird niche author dream.
I think that's an amazing author dream. So, before we talk about the book specifically, I want to chat a little bit about your background. So, as someone who's very much a scholarly person, 2 master's degrees, that was really impressive to me.
Huh.
Um, so, what are your degrees in?
2 master's degrees that I got at the same time, which I do not recommend, just for the record. Um, so one is in organizational leadership, and nobody knows what that means. I describe it as like an MBA, but for nonprofit,
Cool.
um, which is like not super accurate. I'm not an MBA person. Like, I'm not a business person or like a business bro. I know many business bros because I work at a university, but so it's a more nonprofit, more like leadership focused kind of degree. So that one I did on purpose, because I taught at a nonprofit academic program for 7 years, and I thought
That's
maybe
awesome.
yeah, I thought maybe I wanted to do something more with that. Spoiler alert, I didn't. I'm an administrative assistant. That's my day job. And then the other degree is in theology, which was not on purpose, because my favorite professor like just talked me into it. It's pretty easy. Like, if you're one of my favorite people, it is, I shouldn't tell people this, but it's very easy to get me to do things because I just like people, and I'm like a dog. Like, I'm just like, oh, you're my person and I love you and I just want to like make you happy. And so it's like really easy to get me to do things. Which is, we could talk about that, but let's not. So anyway, so I felt kind of stupid about that, but then like the night of orientation for the grad students in our theology program, they had us go around the room and say why we were there, and it turns out that basically everyone got tricked into doing it by that same professor. So I was like, okay,
Oh my God.
he's very persuasive. He got us all. So I mean, it was a fascinating degree. I don't really use it. I just kind of have it. And then occasionally people have questions about theology, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I have a whole master's degree. Let me help you. But yeah, so that's how that happened.
It's kind of fun. It's like, especially when like you have like a mentor person, you want to do the same stuff that they do. I did a lot of that in college too, just following my favorite professors. Do I have any interest in this topic? I will after I take this class.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what it is. I did a botany class in community college because my favorite professor was teaching that, and like, now anyone will tell you I'm basically just 3 trees in a trench coat. So yeah, I very much can just get into like just activities and topics and things, and like find interest in them because of my interest in a person. So it's not that I'm not interested in the topic, but I probably wouldn't have approached it on my own. But then once I have a person that I like, I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go check this out. And then I find things that I like, which is the nice part of just doing things because of people.
Exactly. So Edna's is your debut novel, and I know you've written short stories, and I'll touch on those in a little bit. But did you write any other novels before you wrote Edna?
I wrote so many novels before I wrote Edna. I've been writing for about 20 years now. Okay, to be fair, my first novels, I always like they're novels because they were like 30 to 50 pages, which is technically a short story, but to like little baby E, they were novels. So yeah, I wrote a horrible, very cringy Pirates of the Caribbean times horses novel. It's bad. I live tweeted it once, and I do actually go back and read those threads occasionally if I'm having a bad day because they're hilarious. And I'd rather read my own live tweet than reread the actual story because it was very bad. I wrote multiple things that were clearly inspired by Lord of the Rings because that was another big interest at the time. So I did those. I had an urban fantasy that was meant to be a series, but it never materialized. I worked on that for a really long time. That one was inspired by Disney Channel original movie Sky High. You can see all of my, like in all of my early writing, it's painfully obvious what the influence is. I broke out of that eventually, but for a long time, you can really tell. And then I spent several years revising a novel that felt more like something I would write today. It was like a contemporary fantasy, and like there was a villain, but things weren't black and white again. But the magic was hidden in that world, so I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote, I mean, if you're counting unfinished things in particular, I wrote so many novels before I wrote Edna. She's just the one who like got all the way to the stage of querying.
Did you query before Edna, or was Edna your first querier?
Edna was the first one. Yeah, that was the first one that got to that point where I was. There were others that I revised multiple times, but I always ended up shelving them for some reason. Like usually the plot needs an overhaul, but I don't know what to do with it. So yeah, Edna was the first one that got all the way there, and also was the one I wrote at a time where like I knew what querying was, and you know, like was ready to take the next step, which with the earlier ones I really like I knew nothing about it.
Honestly, I think that's really impressive because a lot of authors, they query so many times before they finally get published.
They do.
Honestly, I think that's amazing.
But also, I mean, I have so many friends who are like, yeah, I wrote this novel when I was 15 and I immediately queried it. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that I do not have that story because it sounds deeply embarrassing. Everyone's like, and I should not have done that. And I'm like, I didn't know what querying was when I was 15. So I did not do that. Saved by my own ignorance, I guess.
Instead of saved by the bell, saved by the ignorance. If I didn't tell a terrible pun, I wouldn't be me. But let's jump into your short stories. So how different is it for you writing short stories compared to novels? Do you find it easier, harder? Do you enjoy doing short stories more than novels?
So for a long time I would have said that it was harder and that I did not enjoy them as much. And in a way that's still true. The last couple of years I've written, for me, a lot of short stories. So I think I've gotten a little more like the hang of it. Like it's hard because, you know, if you want to write like characters that are well-rounded and a world that's coherent, but now you have so many fewer words to do it in. Especially, you know, if you're writing with an eye to submit. So like sometimes you're submitting and the cap is like 10,000 words and that's hard, but like it's kind of doable. And then sometimes the cap is like 2,000 words and you're like, that's basically nothing.
Hard.
Yeah.
That's basically nothing.
Yeah. So my most recent one that just came out April 11th is like 2,500 words, I think. So like I'm getting there. I'm getting the hang of it. But it is definitely difficult to like get that sense of character and world across in fewer words. But on the flip side, like the plotting is way easier, and you avoid like the sagging middle, because if it's only 2,500 words, like there is no sagginess, like it's just very tight. So like, especially with my shorter short stories, from first draft to final draft, there's not a lot of plot overhaul, which is nice and very different from noveling. And right now I'm struggling to finish a draft of anything, which I think is just kind of like a sophomore slump kind of thing happening now that I have a book out. But so for the moment, I think I have to say short stories are easier, but historically
because you can kind of like see the finish line a lot easier.
So then aside from process, my short stories for whatever reason just tend to be like a little bit darker than my novels. I don't know why.
Ooh.
They're more likely to end with like someone like just drowning if it's like an ocean story, or like being eaten by a tree. Like it's like a borderline horror story, but not quite. And I don't know why, because I have no interest in that when it's a novel. But then when it's a short story, I'm like, yeah, let's just kill people off, I guess.
I mean, I guess it's because you don't have to get as attached to them as maybe for like a whole novel.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm pretty attached to them, and I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry about this, but you're gone now. Like, I don't know what it is. I just, for some reason, I just gravitate to slightly darker short story. I actually, as a reader too, like I'm not a horror person as a reader, as a movie viewer, like that's not my genre. But then when it comes to short stories, my favorite short stories are like horror stories. So there's something there, and I just don't know what it is.
That's fun though. Do you have like a favorite short story that you've written? I know, asking you to pick a favorite child.
I really love everything that's recently come out or is coming out. I really, really love. I do tend to just go with the most recent one. So the most recent one that I wrote and that is the most recent to come out is called Sea Change. And it is about like a very grumpy lesbian ex-sea captain who's marooned on this island with this young boy who simps for her like hard, and it's like it's hopeless. There's like a 40-year age difference, and also she's a lesbian, and also he's an idiot. So it's like she's telling him the story about the sea goddess that she was in love with, and like a storm is coming in. It's the shortest one. It's only like 2,500 words. It's an unclear historical, like you're not quite sure of the time period, but you get the vibes that it's historical. It's written in first person, which I almost never do, and I don't prefer as a reader or a writer. So it's just like a really different short story for me, except that again, it's like a little bit on the dark side. And so it's just kind of fun to write something a little different. And so that just came out in Wild Blood Press's anthology From the Depths on April 11th, but I didn't find out until 10 days later when they deposited payment in my account. And then I went to Twitter to see if I could announce that it was coming out. And then I found out it had come out 10 days ago. So.
Oh, but you found out about it, especially because you got paid for it.
Yeah, it was nice. It was like kind of a weird experience because they just like, they didn't tag any of us in the announcement post. They didn't email us to be like, by the way, it's out now. So it was sort of weird, but I mean, I wasn't upset to find out that it was out there. So, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes it'd be like that. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit to talking about Edna. So something that is really interesting about the publishing process for Edna is that you didn't have an agent when your book got picked up by Hanson House, which is your publisher. How is that different from having an agent for your upcoming book, hopefully, which I know is The Many Buried Things of Peter. Oh no, I should have asked you how to say his last name.
Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy. Ooh, I like
yeah.
that. The Many Buried Things of Peter Shaughnessy. Ooh, I like that name.
Yeah. Well, so I subbed to small presses with Edna because I got many this is not marketable rejections from agents. I queried for 2 years. I only sent about 70 queries, which in the grand scheme of thing is not that many, but it was like the height of the pandemic though, and so that was not a good time. A lot. It was not a good time to be querying. It was a very bad time, but like that's when the book was ready. So I do have an agent now that I signed Buried Things with, and we're not on sub yet because I have to finish line edits, but I've been slightly busy with having a debut coming out.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit busy. It's fine. Like they've been great, and they're like, you do have a whole book coming out. It's okay if we need to push this back a little bit, which I appreciate, because I am a person where I'm like, no, I need to get everything done when I first said I would get it done. So I appreciate that a
I
lot.
feel it. I
Yeah.
feel that on a spiritual level.
Yeah. So the really nice thing about, I mean, I think many authors would be like, there's nothing nice about sub sucks. But the nice thing about when I go on sub, like, it's querying 2.0, but like, I do not have to personally send the submissions. And if I do not want to hear about what's happening, unless there's good news, I can just pretend I'm not on sub. I can just write a whole nother thing. I can just kind of pretend like the book doesn't exist. It's not on sub. It's not getting rejected, even though it definitely is. Like, I can just ignore all of that, which is so nice, because I don't need to do querying 2.0 like on my own.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to like have some hand holding. And also something that has surprised me actually is that like sometimes my agent will be like, hey, do you want to do this thing with Edna? Or like, you know, they'll be like, hey, can I get your materials, and I'll like send it to our like our film person who like tries to, you know, drum up some business for like film adaptations. And
Ooh.
yeah, so like who knows if anything will come of that, but like just when they say things like that, I think I spent so long just taking care of Edna by myself that I had it in my head that if I ever had an agent, they would not want anything to do with her because they didn't sell her. And so the fact that my agent is like, hey, let's see like what other avenues we can explore with Edna, is just like really nice to have someone else who is taking care of things and I just don't have to. Like, that's just it's very new and exciting to me.
Like, it's nice to have another person in your boat. Like, I know you've had like a bunch of friend support. Hi, Victoria, I see you. But it's always good to have like that your agent like still cares and is like, yeah, just because they might not have sold that, they still care about you. So I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm really loving that. It's very wonderful.
So we're gonna jump in straight to Edna questions, and we're gonna stay away from spoilers, but we're gonna jump into Edna questions. So I'm gonna ask you that standard question that all the authors get about their books and that you've probably been asked before, but what inspired the remarkable retirement of Edna Fisher?
Yeah.
Pretend like I don't know.
Right, I know. Yeah, I either get asked that or people are like, hey, have you seen this post? And I'm like, yes, that post is what inspired it. So there is this Twitter account called Brooding YA Hero, and it's run by an author who now has a book that is like kind of full of the tweets from that account. But it's like a satirical account of young adults novels, like lovingly poking fun. It's, you know, you can tell it's by someone who loves young adults, but it's poking fun at some of the things, some of the tropes of young adults, such as the broody male love interest who runs the account. And so several years ago from that account, she tweeted something like, why is the chosen one always a teenager? You'd think they'd want someone with more free time and emotional stability, like a grandma. And so that tweet made its way to Tumblr, and Tumblr was like, oh my God, I would read the hell out of a book like this. And someone did like some cute little art of like a grandma and like her orderly and her giant knitting needles and her 6 cats and whatever. And so I saw that years ago, and I have a writing inspo folder on my desktop that I just save random things from around the internet that I think might inspire me at some point. And it sat in there until I needed a new novel idea, and then I scrolled through that folder, and that is what jumped out. So that is what inspired the book.
It's kind of great to see like how like the internet is enough to like inspire a whole novel that's been published. Oh man, it looks really silly when I hold it up because of the blur filter.
There it goes.
Maybe that's better. That's better. But I love that. So gonna jump into our characters. I think the characters of this book are really some of the strongest aspects of the novel. Like from Edna, of course, to Benjamin, Clem, Kieran, Amir, and the rest of the gang, your characters feel really authentic. Like they're real people and they're really like 3D and like fully fleshed out. So once again, I'm going to ask you your favorite child question. Who was your favorite character and who or what, if anything, inspired them?
Yeah. So like not to like be like a little braggy for a second, but I do actually think that
Please
characters
brag.
are like,
Please brag.
okay,
You deserve
well,
to brag.
I'm Midwestern. It's very hard for me. I do think like you should see me at job interviews. It's terrible. I do think that characters are like my strong point, and to make up for the bragging, I will say that plot is my weak point, and it takes me many drafts to get something like a coherent plot usually. But I am very interested in people, as we were talking about a while ago. It's easy to get me to do things because I'm interested in people. But the good thing is, I think that translates well to writing characters because I don't know, it's easy for me to imagine like way more to a person than what we see on the page. So even when there are not things on the page, like I can guarantee I probably know way more about almost any character than what is in the novel.
Ooh.
So although I did have a question at the in-person launch that I had to think about because I hadn't thought about it, but
Oh, what question was that?
it was okay. So there is a scene in the book, as you know, because you read the book. The antagonist attacks Detroit on a dragon, and he is wearing his underwear and like a t-shirt because he just rolled out of bed, and then he had a nightmare, and he has trauma, and he got all enraged, so he just flies off in a rage without changing. So he's attacking Detroit in his underwear. And so first,
We love it.
yeah. Originally he attacked like in clothes, but I realized he had never changed, and I was like, when does he change? And then I was like, well, of course he doesn't, because he's just in a rage and he's not thinking right now, so I guess he's going to be in his underpants. And I just leaned into it. So first, this old woman in the audience was like, what kind of underpants? And I did have an answer to that. His boxers. He's wearing his boxers. And then one of my friends was like, are they like plain boxers or do they have like a print on them?
Yeah, do they have a print on them? I have to know.
Well, and that one I hadn't thought about, but I decided in the spur of the moment, it was very funny to me if he was wearing like boxers with like little cartoon dragons printed on them while he was burning a city down on a real dragon. So that is what you can imagine now. So like that was something I had not thought about. I didn't think about like what his underwear looked like. I was just like, he's wearing boxers. So that
I need someone to draw that for me now.
That's your introduction to this villain, that he attacks cities on dragonback, but he does it while wearing his boxers because he's just enraged and he's a disaster. And yeah. So anyway, I just like totally derailed this question. But to get back to your question, I do love all of my characters, but in this book, Amir is my favorite. He is an old Pakistani man, and he is a carpet enchanter, so he like makes flying carpets. Like he makes the carpet and also enchants it to be able to fly. He is not a super major character, and he's not like a flashy, exciting character, I think. But he's a soft, sweet old man, and that is all I want in a character. So
I love him.
Yeah, he's very sweet, and so I just love him. And I don't think he's tends to be like a favorite because he's just like, he's not who you think about first, but he is my favorite.
I think it's really special to have like the characters who maybe they're not like the hugest characters, but there's so much heart into them. And I felt that with Amir. And him and Edna are just really cute, and it's really easy to mistake them as a couple, and they're just adorable.
Well, mistake that. It's I'll say in my heart, Amir is Edna's love interest. It's not, she doesn't get like a big romantic arc, but like they're together. It's fine.
I like it.
Sometimes people ask me, they'll be like, are they like a thing? And I'm like, yeah. And so,
Ooh.
Yeah.
Can we get a sequel or short story where they just relax on a beach? I think they just deserve to relax on a beach after this adventure.
I am actually working on an Edna short story for an anthology the publisher is doing, but it is a prequel. Ooh. It's a prequel story, but it'll be Edna and Benjamin like getting to know each other when Edna first moves into the home.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
It's very sweet so far. Turns out that when Edna first gets to the home, she's like very grumpy. Like she's so cheerful in the story, and no, she's very unhappy to have just moved into this home she hates. And so she is very, very grumpy right now, and it's kind of fascinating to write.
Look, most older people never want to move into a nursing home,
especially
retirement home.
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's not a good home.
It's not a fun time. But speaking of not fun times, what are some difficulties, if any, that you ran into while writing the story? Hard question. We just jumped from really fun to really hard. Just jumped all over the place.
Other than plotting in general, well, to be fair with this one, so I wrote this, the first draft over 72 weeks as part of a writing challenge on youngwritersociety.com called Last Man Standing. So it's just what it sounds like. You had to write like 1,000 words a week and turn your words in by the deadline. And if you missed the deadline, you were out. So because I was writing it that way, I was just kind of like wandering off onto whatever random little side quests I felt like exploring. And so that was really fun. But then I had a 160,000 word first draft that somehow needed to be revised down to at least 120,000 words to query. And also like the plot just needed so much, like I cut so much stuff out of this. So there was that. But that's also always a difficulty for me. I always struggle with plot. So the other big thing for this book is like making it clear to readers right away when you start the book what the world is like, because most fantasy is like one of two things. You either have secondary world fantasy where you are in a whole fantasy world and magic or magical creatures are either normalized or at least they're well known, or at the very least they're like a well-known part of history. Or you have like a real world setting but the magic is hidden. And in Remarkable Retirement, you have a real world setting, but magic just exists openly and everyone knows about it. And in early drafts, there is a scene right in the first chapter where a wizard shows up at Edna's nursing home. And early readers were confused by the residents' reaction because the residents were surprised to see a wizard at their nursing home in particular, but like they were not shocked by the existence of a wizard or the fact that he just popped up out of thin air. They were just like, huh, what's he doing here? And that was like the only source of confusion for them. And so it took many, many, many rewrites of the opening to like really get it very clear from the first sentence that you are in the contemporary world, but also there's magic and everyone just knows about it.
I think that's something that's less, like you said, usually it's hidden worlds when you do contemporary. But I think, and sometimes when it's not hidden world, sometimes it's like a larger, I'm going to get to it, but it's kind of like a more harder, quote unquote, world building where it's like every single inch of it is like, you know about it. But I really liked this where it was like, it was more softer. I call it like softer world building, like soft magic system. And I think this really works in the kind of story that you were trying to tell. So I think you might have rewritten it a million times, but it worked.
Thank you.
I'm very interested about content that got cut though. What were some things that got cut that you want to share?
Okay, so some things got cut like mid-draft. Like originally, so there's a different post at some point that was about like monsters under the bed, and I forget what the post is. But in the first draft, for a very short time, Clem had a monster who lived under her bed who she just like carried around with her. And that was like too much for me to deal with. So that monster got cut almost immediately.
That's so fair.
Edna had a cat that was like a stray who was living outside the nursing home. And then when she and Benjamin left to go on their adventure, she was like, we can't leave him behind. And Benjamin was like, oh God, please, can we leave him behind? And like the cat was always clawing up his leg and things like that. But I cannot do pets in fiction. I forget about them. So like Edna and Benjamin would like park the car somewhere and go off. And I'd be like, oh shit, the cat is still in the car. It's like hot out. It's gonna die in the car. And so the cat at some point in early draft just got like left back in Detroit with Amir. I was like, I need him to just be out of the way because I cannot handle having a cat around. And so
really fair.
So in subsequent drafts, he just got cut because I was like, I can't just like invent a cat and then just leave him in Detroit for half the book. Like he just needs to go. So Edna no longer has a cat.
It's sad, but
yeah,
cat,
but I just can't.
You shall be missed.
I have pets. My characters never have pets because I just forget about the pets and I can't. It's just too many things for me to think about, so it just never happens. And then there was a whole part where they're like in the area that the antagonist lives in, like not his evil lair per se, but like just the whole area. And they spent thousands of words just wandering around there, and there was like a monster, and like Benjamin got attacked by it. It was like a whole thing. They had to like go find Clem at some point. She like wandered off or got lost or something. So it was like there was a lot that got cut because it was 160,000 words, and the published
That's so many words.
Yeah, and the published version is like 98,000 words.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was a lot. There was a lot. I cut a lot.
What was the cat's name?
Mittens.
Oh, that's so cute. I had to ask. It's okay, Mittens. You exist in my heart. That's so cute. Now I'm just imagining Edna with like 6 little cats named Mittens now.
That original post on Tumblr did say like 6 cats, and I was like, well, 1 cat. And then like one draft later, I was like, 0 cats. That's too many.
No cats. Too hard.
No cats. Yeah.
Look, you are very valid. You are extremely valid. So I asked you what was your hardest part to write. So I'm going to ask you, what was your favorite part to write? Do you have any specific quotes that were your favorite that are not spoilery? Like mine, for example, which we've talked about a bit, was my lovely Benjamin being like, "We are not flying into a shitload of dragons, Edna." And like, come on, if that quote doesn't make you want to pick up the book, I don't know what else will, because that was a really fun quote. I was like, this is great. I love this quote very much.
Especially because Benjamin doesn't swear, and that's like his time. He swears like a little bit, but it's like you don't
a little bit.
Yeah, you don't think about it though, and then he yells, "We are not flying into a shitload of dragons." I have a temporary tattoo of that quote that I got. So
I
like,
love that.
It's hard to see, but there's like a little dragon icon on there, and it says, "We're not flying right into a shitload of dragons." And that was my like gift to me for getting the book published, was a temporary tattoo.
I think you should get it as a permanent tattoo. That's amazing.
I don't do permanent tattoos because I have ADHD and I would constantly change my mind about what I want and where I want it. But I love
That's
temporary
really fair.
tattoos.
That's really fair.
So Inkbox, you can like not to like, they should pay me to advertise for them, but like you can do custom tattoos and you can like design your own and stuff. And
know that.
Yeah, so I've gotten it multiple times, and I just like to wear it periodically if I'm not going to be at work, or if I can put it somewhere where no one at work will see the word shitload on my body while I'm in a professional setting. So other favorite lines, usually I reach for like the sillier ones. There are so many serious lines in the book that I do love, but I always think of the silly ones. So like there's a part in the climax where a character is like running through a fiery inferno, and for no real reason except for the fact that she cannot bring herself to stop moving, she thinks an object in motion stays in motion. And then because that's where her brain already is, for absolutely no reason, she thinks the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
I remember that.
Yeah, I thought maybe an editor would make me get rid of that, but they didn't, so it's still there. So I tend to forget about it, and then I'm rereading and I get back to that line and I start giggling to myself because it's just so ridiculous in the midst of like this very serious traumatic scene with this character who's deeply traumatized, and she just thinks about something from biology class. And so I love that. My favorite part of the story to write is a massive spoiler and the big twist, so I can't say what it was, but I will say that I was looking forward to it from before I started drafting. I didn't know, so I heavily pantsed this novel. I did like a little planning each week after I turned in my 1,000 words, but I didn't have like a roadmap before I started really, but there were like a couple things I knew about the book going into it, and one of them was this massive plot twist, and I had a whole scene in my head for it. And so in the first draft, it probably took me like a good like 120, 140,000 words to get there, and then I finally got there, and I wrote it. And then I had to stop writing for a couple days because it emotionally exhausted me. But it was the part I was looking the most forward to write. And it is the part that when I read it, I sort of grin evilly a little bit. And I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry, everyone, that this is happening. But also, I think it's awesome. So that was my favorite part.
Too, because I know what part you're talking about.
Yeah, it's I like to think I did a good job with it. And I love when people like DM me like live reacting to get when they get there. It's great. I love it.
I absolutely think that you did an amazing job with that. And that's kind of like the downside of having a physical copy sometimes, despite the fact like I can't really read ebooks, but my brain will go flip through a book and then I'll be like, oh no, that's a spoiler, Sam. But it's still a really good scene even when you know it. So I talked a little bit about this, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. So like I said, my favorite aspects with what you did with Edna was definitely the world building. Like I said, you hear soft versus hard magic systems, but I like to apply that to world building too. And for me, Edna felt like that very soft world building system, which really works with the story that you're trying to tell. How did you kind of manage to find that balance between telling too little and telling too much? Like you mentioned a little bit with like the opening, but do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that you call it a soft world building system. Like that. Yeah. When I saw that, that just really resonated with me. I do very much tend toward like soft magic systems to the point where I think it's generous to call it a system. Like I'm just like, you know, it's magic. Which is also
it's magic.
Yeah, like that's how I feel as a reader. Like I admire writers who can and do write hard magic systems, and I do find them fascinating. But like at the same time, if you just say it's magic and no one really knows how it works, I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense because it's magic.
Honestly, sometimes hard magic systems go over my head.
That is also sometimes maybe that I'm just like not smart enough for a magic system. No, I do. Yeah, I find them fascinating, but I'm just not interested in the mechanics of magic. Especially as a writer, but even as a reader, I'm just not interested. I'm like, it's magic. I don't want to know how it works. Just it's magic, whatever. And so that is very much how I write. Like in my new manuscript, there's actually a line where someone asks the main character how it works. And he's like, well, I don't know. It's magic. And that's 1,000% me telling the readers I'm just not going to explain.
Look, that's really valid, honestly.
So if you like hard magic systems, none of my stories that I ever write ever are probably for you, and I'm very sorry about that. But
soft magic systems we're here for.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, if you like soft magic systems, you'll probably be good with it. So yeah. So partially because I pants this novel, it always kills me that like the world building does tend to be people's favorite things. Like if they like the book, I think the world building also, there are definitely people who just might be like, yeah, I'm not into anything about this. But the people who like the book definitely like the world building is a favorite part. And they're like, you're so good at it. And that is like awesome. But I just kind of threw things in as they felt relevant and occurred to me. I mean, I cleaned it up in revisions, obviously, but like, you know, I would just have an idea, like they're at a magical market and people are selling things. And I'm like, well, these things have to be magical. What are some like ways I could make this be magical? So you've got like the purses, like someone's selling these handbags and they're designer handbags with like a built-in pocket dimension for that extra storage. Or somebody is selling cell phones and they're like, they're magically enhanced. And then another person's like, well, it can't be real iPhones. You're not allowed to magically enhance Apple products because
I love that line.
Just think, I'm like, Apple's gonna sue me because, but like, let's face it though, if you could magically enhance technology, Apple would not let you do it to Apple products. It's just facts. But I am kind of expecting, I think one day someone from Apple is gonna read it and be mad that I told the truth about something. They're gonna sue me about it. But anyway, I am an Android person and a Microsoft person, and make of that what you will. Yeah, so that was a lot of it, was that like it's the contemporary world. So as I was writing, I just felt like a lot of it didn't need explanation because I'm like, it's just the real world, except also magic. And I think a lot of the magical things I draw on are like, you know, like, okay, like I don't explain what a pocket dimension is, but I say it's for extra storage. And I think like you have enough of an idea, you can be like, oh, okay, so that's, you know, like you can kind of vibe what it is. And so I sort of drew on a lot of that where I'm like, you can probably figure it out from context well enough to get on with. And then if it was something that you actually needed to know about, like the knights, I do talk a little bit more about like their history and why people think they're necessary and all of that, because they're a very big part of the book and they're a more established organization or system. So when it was something that was more immediately plot relevant, or like Kieran has luck magic, like he's an elf, and elves, at least his kind of elf, their primary magic is luck magic. So he just has like ridiculous good luck, but also he can kind of draw on it to an extent. And so like I do spend a little more time explaining that and like the pitfalls of that, because it's more plot relevant. So yeah, basically it was things that were more immediately important to the plot get more explanation, and then everything else is just kind of set dressing. It's there, it's part of the world, but you don't really need to know that much about it. And then also I think when I was younger, it was really my instinct to like over explain about the world. Yeah, and as I've gotten as I've spent more time writing, that's just something I've let go of, where I'm like, I just need to trust that readers will get it. And so then while I have people beta reading, if everybody is confused by something, then I know that I took too much out and I need to like put something back in. And that's when I know I need to add something.
Honestly, I think that's a great system and way to do it. It's like you don't want to ever like just drop so much that it's like, who asked for this? But you found like that way to balance it. And I think that's great. So one of my last specific Edna questions, let's talk a bit about the audiobook. So first of all, congratulations on the Kickstarter meeting its goal.
Thank you.
How is the process going with like the audiobook? Can you tell us a bit about the narrators? Do you know when the audiobook's going to be like available, or way too soon for that?
Way too soon for that. We kind of just got started. So we had so Hanson House is a very, very small publisher. And so audiobooks are something they've been wanting to do for a while, but they haven't had the resources, hence the crowdfund. And so like at first, like we weren't even sure. We were like, is this going to happen? It just depends. And so the crowdfund hit the goal like a week and a half ago, maybe. So like we kind of just found out that, yes, we can do it. And so the process hasn't really gotten started yet. But the narrator is actually the co-host of a podcast who they've been looking to break into audiobook narration and editing. Cool. So it's kind of a new thing for them, a new thing for the publisher, a new thing for me, which can have disadvantages because like all of us are sort of learning as we go, but at the same time, it's like really exciting to kind of be there at the ground floor, so to speak, and to just be doing something new altogether, and everyone's really excited about it. I don't personally listen to audiobooks. I'm excited to have one because so many people asked for one, especially for grandparents that they wanted to share it with. But like my publisher sent me a sample from the narrator, was like, what do you think of this? And I was like listening to it and I was like,
sounds like an audiobook.
I was like, I don't know what I'm listening for, but I mean, they didn't put me to sleep, so that's good. And then actually sent the clip to Victoria to be like, you listen to audiobooks, what do you think? Because I was like, I don't know what I'm listening for. So hopefully it'll be good. If it's not, I won't be able to tell. So sorry about that to all of you audiobook listeners out there. But yeah, so we haven't really gotten started yet, but I am so excited about it. It's just going to make the book so much more accessible to more people. And that's like the whole goal.
I think like that's one of the best things about audiobooks. It makes it accessible to those who wouldn't be able to read it otherwise. And I think it's really cool that you get to be like the first audiobook with your publisher.
Yeah,
like, I think that's really cool. Yeah, some Ariel said in the comments, even a bad audiobook is better than no audiobook, and I think that's absolutely true.
Hopefully it will not be a bad audiobook, but good, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. So gonna jump into some more general questions and then gonna open to the audience. I will do one of my questions. What other books would you recommend to fans of Remarkable Retirement?
Okay, I have several. I'm going to read off of my list, and I also wrote like name pronunciations for myself. So if any of the authors watch later, hopefully I don't butcher their names.
You did so much better than I did with that with your poor boy's last name. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It has like a lot of vowels and a GH, and it's all sorts of confusing. So the first one is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. It is a cozy fantasy, but like a high fantasy. So if you like Dungeons and Dragons, it will probably appeal to you. If you like more of a secondary fantasy, it'll appeal to you. But like Edna, it has like the cozy vibes and it has the found family. It's much lower stakes. It's like an orc trying to start her own coffee shop. And I really enjoyed that. There's The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, who I read this over Christmas at the suggestion of someone who had read Buried Things and was like, I think this would be a great comp for this book. And it is. And also it was like instant favorite, new comfort book. It's a contemporary fantasy with like lighter speculative elements, like the main character is a witch and most people don't know that witches exist. There's excellent found family. There is a wonderful elderly gay couple who I just adore. There is a grump with a heart of gold love interest who I think is just so wonderfully written. Again, like very cozy vibes, excellent found family. I like new favorite. I loved it. It was great. There is Bitter Medicine by my fellow debut Mia Tsai. That one I have not read yet. It just came out in March, but that's a contemporary fantasy. And I think, so again, I haven't read it, but based on what I've seen about it, I think that world building wise, it's going to be a little more like Edna. I think it's like, I don't know if it's a secondary world or like hidden world, but it seems like the magical realm, whatever it is, has more contemporary, like think Terry Pratchett a little bit, world building. Okay. Like the main character is like an office worker or something in like a dead end job, but then like the love interest is like an elf. Yeah. So I'm really excited. Cool. Yeah. So I haven't read it yet, but I think that one would appeal. Another fellow debut, World Running Down by L. Hess.
Yes, I've heard good things about that one.
Yes, my copy, like my order sort of got lost or something at the warehouse, but I finally have it. It is a cozy dystopia. If you're looking for something like a little different and funky. So that one sounds really good. And then if you're looking for older protagonists, I had to reach into like the mystery genre more than fantasy. But Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q Sutanto. So that's a mystery with a 60-something protagonist. And then this one's a little older, but An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helene Tursten, a Swedish author. Again, a mystery. With an 80-something protagonist, and I think there are, I think that's a series. I think there's a couple books at least about that character. So if you're looking for some similar speculative fiction or some, if you don't mind, mystery with an older protagonist, those are my recommendations for you.
Cool. I, for one, am very interested in checking out Bitter Medicine. That sounds really cool. I haven't heard that one before. I try to stay up to date on a ton of new books because I like to order them for the library. But now I am going to see, audience, do y'all have any questions? Y'all don't have to have questions, but if you do, we can have E answer them for us. Ariel asks, what are your character's favorite colors? Honestly, 10 out of 10, love that question.
Now, see, that's one of those things about character as I don't think about. And the reason I don't think about it is because I did not have a favorite color for a very, 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 very long time. Because, like, don't ask me my favorites about like most things, because I cannot tell you my favorite song, my favorite TV. Like, I don't have like a favorite of things. So I don't think about that for my characters. Maybe they do, but if they do, it's private information. I don't know what it is.
Look, I like that answer. I think that's a fun answer. Caitlin asks, what is on/around your writing space?
So my writing space is a very fluid concept. Currently, you can't tell because I have this cool background that I made for Zoom. But currently I am in my office / the plant room / the cat's room / the library. It's like a second bedroom, but it has books and plants and the cat's litter box and whatnot. So if I were like good and I would sit in here and do my writing, I have just like my desktop that my partner built for me. And like, that's it. It's just on a corner table that my grandpa built, and I have a bench with many, many pillows on it. But I do most of my writing either out on the living room couch, because I feel too isolated in here. Like, this is good for a Zoom meeting, but even if I come in here to play computer games, like, I have to put on YouTube music because I just feel like isolated over here in a room. I've always been that way. I like to work in the middle of the house. So sometimes that's like the kitchen table, or sometimes it's the living room couch. It just depends on like what house I'm in and where I'm living. So at my parents' house, it's usually the kitchen table. So yeah, I usually either sit in the corner of the couch and I'm hunched over my laptop like a gremlin and doing horrible things to my back, or I go to the coffee shop, any coffee shop. I have so many options around here because I will actually get work done there because I don't have Netflix on and I just have music and people and coffee. And so like any coffee shop in the Toledo area is my writing space. So that's a long answer to basically say I don't have a dedicated writing space, but I don't really have like a dedicated writing space.
I don't know. I think coffee is a great motivator for writing.
It is a great motivator. Sometimes
coffee
even
is...
that can't get me to go, but it is more, I'm more likely to do good work there though.
So we're getting towards the end. Do we have any final questions? Otherwise, I will ask a final question. Going once, going twice. Sold to me for $100. Haha. So, the best question of all, tell us about some of your upcoming projects. What other books are you working on? What other short stories are you working on? Any future releases coming up? We are very eyes emojis waiting.
Right, right. So novel-wise, nothing else coming up currently because I'm not even on sub yet because I have to finish line edits. But the book I signed with my agent, on Twitter, I just refer to it as Groundskeeper Whip. So if you see me talking about that, that's this book. It's another one with an elderly protagonist. He's actually immortal, but instead of being like a hot 25-year-old, he looks like he's in his 70s. And he has all the aches and pains of being in his 70s. So he is cursed with immortality and he hunts ghosts because he would rather do that than make friends who are just going to die one day. But then plot twist, he makes friends. And then he has to decide if he finishes out his ghost hunt, even though he's like coming to care for people and that could, hurt him. Or does he want to, protect himself by leaving, but then his new friends are going to be at the mercy of this ghost. So that's another contemporary fantasy, but the speculative elements are much lighter. It's mostly ghosts and some vague plant magic, like he can talk to plants.
Ooh, that sounds
you'll
like
have to
fun.
tell me once you eventually, God willing, that comes out and you read that, you'll have to tell me if you think that's a soft world building system too.
Absolutely.
So it has like found family, again, very central, also a central romantic arc that I love. And a love interest who definitely has undiagnosed ADHD. So just a really I love Edna, but honestly, this book is next level, like craft wise. And like when I went to write it, I didn't know if I if I had that level of skill as a writer to make it do what I want, but I did, and I'm really happy with it. So yeah, so hopefully we'll go on sub at some point this year once I have like turned things in and gotten edits back from my agent.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so cross your fingers and toes that some editor somewhere likes that one. I'm currently working on the Edna Benjamin short story for Hanson House's anthology. It's going to be like a holiday anthology, so holiday stories from their various authors.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, so it's Christmas at the nursing home, and Edna has just been living there for 2 months, and she is miserable. She hates it. Janine, who is the activities director at the home, is just driving her up a wall. She's very grumpy. It's like so weird. Like I didn't really think about that, but then I started writing and she was just very angry to be at the home. And I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And so Benjamin is like trying to kind of help her through that. And so like, it's just like the beginning of their friendship / grandma-grandson ship. So that's, I don't know what the timeline is on the anthology. I know we have until the end of June to turn in our stories. So at some point after that, other than that, I don't really have anything upcoming. I do have stories out that you can read if you're interested. So there is Sea Change, which is in Wild Blood Press's From the Depths. That's the one I was talking about earlier. That's like sort of vaguely historical, involving an ex-sea captain and a young boy who are marooned on an island together. If you read S.J. Whitby's anthology Awakenings, it's tied into their Cute Mutants series, but you don't have to have read the series to read Awakenings. Many of the stories are like barely tie-in, so like mine you can basically read as a standalone, and there are others as well. That one is about an 11-year-old girl who has an abusive uncle she lives with, and so she's like running away from him one day, and she meets this old witch in the woods, and the witch has like these kind of plant powers, and the girl discovers she kind of has them too, and so there's like found family, and again a physical abuse angle, which is also an Edna. And so like when my mom read this short story, she was like, should I be concerned that you keep writing these stories about physical abuse? And I'm like, no, you're like, it's good. We're good. It's fine. I don't know why I keep gravitating toward that, but yeah, but it's, so that's very central found family, and like a very woodsy, just like foresty kind of story that I really enjoyed writing. And then in Dark Horses magazine, Dark Horse is the magazine of weird fiction, I have to say, because there's a different magazine called Dark Horse, and it is not that one. But issue 4 of Dark Horses, there's one called The Raising of Hester McCrae that is about a necromancer, but nobody knows that she's a necromancer, including her own wife. And then she raises this little boy from the dead, and then like drama and terrible things happen.
That sounds really cute.
Yeah, it's like again a little darker, but like kind of the love story is pretty central in the fact that like she's potentially about to like totally screw her wife over, because like even her wife does not know she has these powers, and the whole town knows her wife has some powers, so they just assume that she did it.
Oh.
And yeah, it's a whole thing. I'm like low-key expanding that one. I've been writing more about these two women. But like there's no plot. I'm just writing whatever random scenes I have. So we'll see if anything comes of that. So those 3 short stories are out, and then at some point, question mark as to when, Gutslut Press has, I think it'll be digital only, anthology called Suicide Aliens. And so I have another oceany short story in that one called Jane and the Sea White. So it's got kind of vaguely monstrous mer people, and this girl who is looking for her missing father, and it all kind of ties together. Because
that
again,
sounds
like
really cool.
My short stories tend to be darker than my novels for some reason. But hopefully, if you like my novels, you will still like the short stories, even if you're not looking for a darker read necessarily. So yeah, so those are things that are out or coming out, and then hopefully we'll go on sub with this other novel this year, and we'll see what happens.
Fingers, toes, and legs are all crossed. I don't think I can cross anything else. But I'm very excited.
Thank you.
And I think with that, we might be at the end of our time. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for everyone who is here and chatting with us. And thank you for everyone who will watch this video after the fact. Are there any final thoughts you want to say before we head out?
I'm just curious about like what Lucas County Bar is doing here. Like, have I said anything that's going to get me in trouble with the law? Did we felt a need to have lawyers on standby? I don't even know if that's what that's referring to, but that was immediately where my thought went. So
honestly, that's the funniest name I've seen ever. And I'm wondering if it's someone who actually works for the Lucas County Bar.
And see, well, and I'm in Lucas County in Ohio, so I'm like, is it like one of my people over here? Do you have a Lucas County over there? I don't know.
I don't think we have a Lucas County, honestly. Maybe it's one of your people. I'm very curious.
And they're just keeping an eye on me. So whoever you are, hello. I've been staring at your screen name like the whole event. So hello, special hello to the Lucas County Bar, whoever you are. Okay, and I think with that, I'm going to end the recording.